Everyone, welcome. This is the GTM AI podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having Jonathan Moss join me as a guest and introducing him as a co-host to this podcast for all things go-to-market and AI. This podcast is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to resource for courses, live trainings, and playbooks of how to leverage AI and go-to-market teams and individual roles. You can find this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and more. For more, go to gtmaiacademy.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Coach K, and I am very excited to have my bald, bearded brother from another mother, who's actually also named Jonathan, with me, Jonathan Moss. So good to have you, my friend.
Great to be here. Thanks for letting me on. I got the hat on today. I showed a little bit of the baldness, but at least we're going to keep that under wraps today, at least.
That's right, man. I love it. I know some of you might be listening on audio, but he's got these cool killer picture behind him of Native Americans, which is just phenomenal. I usually lived in the Southwest for a while, so I love that kind of art. So it's way cool. But I'm really excited to have you on because not only are you going to have you on as a guest, but you're going to be my co-host in a couple of things, which is why I'm having you on, is to introduce you. And we've had a chat before on your podcast that you did with Pavilion, which I loved. And today, before we jump into talking about the new format we'll be doing with people as we move forward, I want to get to know you. So would love to have you introduce yourself, talk about your own professional experience and just what you've been doing in AI, and we'll kind of just jump in and I'll pick your brain on some things.
Love it. Love it. No, and I'm excited about being alongside with you because I think it's a great space to be in. I think we interact really well. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it. And so, get Jonathan Moss, basically been a go-to-market leader my entire career. Started in sales, went into operations, went into enablement and L&D, then led all the teams. So left a larger company, a public company, went into startups and been in every series of startup from PE back to Series D all the way through Series A, leading marketing teams, customer success teams, RevOps, et cetera. So you name it, I've done it. Most recently, I was the CRO of a startup, and then now I am the executive vice president of growth and go-to-market operations. Go-to-market's in my blood. This is why I love it. And one of the things that I've always been pounding the sand on since being a go-to-market leader is especially working with products that have AI embedded in them and selling them is like, why can't we use this as a go-to-market team? Why is it all about the customer, which it is, by the way, but at the same time, there's so many efficiencies gained. And so that's really why I started using AI and diving in. I've been at a few organizations that have had AI in their product. So I know a lot about the underlying technical capabilities as well as what it can do. And so now I've been diving in head first ever since GPT launched. And yeah, it's been great. Been exciting.
No, I love it, man. So we connected through Pavilion, which we have a channel there called AI for GTM. And it's cool to see everyone's brainstorming ideas and even prompting and keep each other updated on news, which has been fun. But I'd love to know, like when we first connected, you didn't have the executive VP job that you have now. So I'm really curious I'm just wondering what you're doing now, what you're doing differently this time around. Now you have AI, like how you're working your team and how you have integrated AI inside of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this one, first thing we did was, and I'll step back from AI for just a second and go to market. And then let me tell you how we're thinking about it and what we're doing. And so the first thing we did, if you haven't read or looked at the Winning by Design revenue architecture, I think it's phenomenal and something that you've got to do. So for those listeners, that's the first thing we did. Because in order for me to be in the team to be able to make decisions on where we needed to invest our time, understanding the revenue machinery, what was working, what was not, we had to understand where our baseline was and where we're at today. So first and foremost, we instituted that. Now we understand that a lot of things that we're doing, and we have an AI roadmap that we started pulling together of how could this benefit marketing? Where are some of those key spots in sales? What about customer success, RevOps, et cetera? And so we started small. And I think this is the biggest thing is find the low hanging fruit opportunities. So for example, marketing team utilizing content, using AI in order to make it multi-channel. So where they can use the same content and distribute it out in different places without having to recreate it. I'm also using it for go-to-market strategy. And so what I mean by that is end to end, we have 2 product lines and we have 2 service lines at the business that I'm at now. And so ultimately, really understanding inside of our current base and other opportunities, how do we go to market? How are we, utilizing our unique value proposition? What are the right channels? all of those things. And it's really testing us. And what I call it's helping us see around corners or making sure that we don't have blind spots of what we're doing. From the sell side, we're using it to help with personalization and research. We're helping it with ensuring that we're doing next best actions. So what is it the next thing that you should do that could potentially help you be successful with the propensity to close or the multi-threading, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that we're looking at doing. And going back to where we started small. So for example, we're a Microsoft company. We have teams, therefore internally we're using a little bit of Copilot. And we're doing simple things like creating FAQ documents, being able to respond to chat, or for our support teams answering questions on demand because they can go and query the entire knowledge base. In fact, I used a really interesting use case, I will say, the other day, which was super beneficial. We went through a PowerPoint presentation with a customer, and I used Copilot and prompted it and told it to give me a summary of the PowerPoint so I could resend an email. And it went through the whole entire PowerPoint and actually came with the material summary, the next steps, technical integrations, all that stuff. So there's so many different low-hanging fruit ways like that you can just get started that are beneficial and impactful.
That's cool. So with your team then, because you oversee obviously the entire GTM structure. So curious, because I get this question asked all the time. I want to pick your brain on it is, where in the world do you start with AI? And part of it's like looking, because to me, AI is a tool. And so understanding, like you said, the basic infrastructure of the winning by design framework and the process, all that kind of thing. So once you have that, whatever methodology you want to implement, what's the next step? How do you work it? How do you look at it?
Yeah. So I think the next step is really understand. What you have to do is understand where your data is today, because data is super important, right? And how you can leverage it. So I think that's why sometimes use cases can be a little bit difficult at first or your workflows can be difficult first until you actually understand the data, which is why we chose to do some of the more simpler workflows to start. Mentioned a few of those, like the FAQs, mentioned the support queries, et cetera. Another one that I'll share is with our health score, our customer health score. So our customer health score was something that was not good. We'll just put it that way. It was interesting because we would have churn customers that would end up putting in their notice and they had a green health score or a really high health score. So obviously something's completely off. Something's going on, right? And so the challenge that we had is everything on our health score was lagging. So by the time that it updated, the customer may be already gone. And so what we had to do is really understand some leading indicators, and we put that through AI simulations and using our data to look at our churn customers, look at some of the leading indicators like product adoption, number of products that they have or service lines that they have, number of support tickets, things like that, just to try to get some leading indicator. And so that's another thing that we've done is overhauled not only our customer health score, we also did that with MQLs. So it's just really, what are the opportunities that you see that are driving the biggest impact? And then how can you find those kind of automated, think about the manual tasks that go into it, whether it's manual data creation, analysis of the data, workflows, manual entry points, and how you can use AI to really streamline that. And I think one thing you said is super important to hit on again is it's an augmentation. So I think that's critical for folks to know is it's really about how us as humans can use it to augment our workflows, augment our research, augment the time that it takes us to do manual things. Anything that you can think of that would fit within that category, I think that's where you really start.
So you said a couple of things interesting that kind of sparked one of the thoughts I had from the interview with Sam Altman from 2-3 weeks ago with Lex Friedman, how he talked about how people were worried about jobs being taken by AIs. Like, we shouldn't be talking about jobs. We should be talking about tasks, like 5-minute tasks and 5-hour tasks and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting to hear. Have you seen you or your team change any fundamental part of a process as a result of AI, because AI can do things that you couldn't do before? Have you seen anything change?
Yeah, I think I love that. And I didn't hear that interview, so I'm gonna have to listen to it, but I think that's a really good outlook of what tasks can it take, because ultimately us as humans, we're creative in nature. We're strategic. Those are the things we should be spending our brain power against, and not data entry or manual things. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things to look at and how you think about that. And it was funny because once I introduced AI and said, hey, we're going to start piloting Copilot, and I want you to think about what are the things each day that take you time and effort, but not use brain power, that you have to repeat? They're repetitive, they're ongoing, and you do them once a week, twice a week, every day, whatever it is. And it was interesting because the chat lit up because people started to think about this, and they would be like, oh, I could use AI for this, or, oh, I just had to do this and spent 15 minutes doing this. I'm going to use AI for this. And so it's interesting because it was just a different point of reference or point of view. When you start thinking about it, you start putting in all these scenarios. And one of the ones I think that was really impactful from a time perspective, probably doesn't seem that big, but was close loss analysis. And so our closed loss was very free form text, and it's hard to analyze and get key themes and things like that. And by the way, so was our NPS. We actually implemented this on NPS as well, really doing this kind of qualitative analysis for us, where we can just dump all of the qualitative feedback and then look at and give us the key themes, the key challenges or problems, and even a list of customers that said that, right? So now you have your themes, and then you bucket it with the customers or the opportunities that had those. And now you have some data and some insights into what would have taken forever for someone to really sit down and comb through and do. And I think that's one of many examples of a task that can be taken away and really done super streamlined and very quickly with AI.
Yeah, the concept you come down to, this is what you and I talked about in the podcast originally, was just like, how do you trust? Whether you're talking about the closed loss analysis you're just referring to, or your churn, you're taking some sort of qualitative data, plugging it into ChatGPT or whatever tool. Question is, how do you, as a leader, how do you trust that data? And it's not getting too creative. What do you do to make sure it's not being, because the only way to trust is to read all of the stuff to make sure you know it's being accurate. So how do you trust it?
Yeah, no, it's a very great question. And so I think there always has to be, number one, someone to validate it. So you still have to have someone to take a sample size, look at it, et cetera. If it's really qualitative, I think that's number one. And so even when I do pipeline analysis, or I've had GPT create like a lead scoring algorithm and then create synthetic data for me to test it on.
Which is cool, by the way. I've seen your work. Well, that's a cool one.
So I still go back and double check my work, right? Because I have found errors and issues and challenges. So I think that's still important. It's not a silver bullet, and it's not something that is just like you would go back and check a human doing it. You have to still check sometimes the AI. I think that's number one. Number two is, if you have quantifiable data. So in other words, let's take the churn for an example, or the NPS. I have quantifiable data against an opportunity or against a customer. I can then go back and easily check to see and make sure that, hey, these are customers that did churn and things like that. And so I can go back and do a little bit of that analysis as well. Yeah. And so I think the key is, you may say, then why wouldn't you just do the analysis anyway? But it really does save time and effort. Even if I just go back and recheck, then it would be creating the structure, creating the data, doing the analysis, and spending all that time. And so I think the key summary is you still need to double check the accuracy of the data and the information so you can trust it. And look, it'll continue to get better over time from here on out.
So I'm curious, when you have the customer churn, like if I'm going to double click into that situation specific, so I'm just really interested on, what did it tell you that you didn't know before? And how, like you said, a lot of the churn is lagging. So you find out way too late. So what were you looking at to say, okay, let's find out more real time and faster where the churn is? And what has that changed in your process as a result of that analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things. One is we found out that customers that had higher number of tickets, specifically for certain products or certain elements of products, actually churned higher. So that was one thing where we would know the ticket volume potentially, but wouldn't necessarily know the specifics around it, et cetera. Another thing that it led to was understanding in advance. So and I'll have to explain a little bit about our business. We have an urgent care software and services. And so one of the things that's important to us that we're relating is the number of visits a clinic gets, because obviously number of visits equals revenue. And so one of the things that we weren't monitoring as part of our health score was the number of visits by clinic and do they start to decline. Now, what's interesting about the business that we're in is it's very seasonal. So you get higher visit spikes in the colder months because you have flu and things like that. And then obviously it starts to dip. And so there's a seasonality trend. And so really understanding the seasonality and understanding getting ahead of, is the volume below a threshold that's in this red zone, if you will, of potential churn because they're not making enough money to cover their expenses. So there's things like that we started to understand. And then also the net revenue per visit. So we look at how much revenue are they generating per visit. So we started to really be able to analyze these things to get ahead of, are they driving enough business to meet their OpEx? Are the things happening? Are they utilizing our software the way that they should to really help their business? So there's things like that you have some hypothesis around and you're like, hey, that makes sense. But you don't know which location at what time is especially because we have 7,000 locations. So you don't know which location at which time is falling into these danger zones.
So you're able to take that massive data set, plug in the ChatGPT, I'm guessing?
Yep. Copilot, but yes.
Copilot. Copilot.
Yeah.
So then you use that and then your analysis, what it gleaned for you. Because the question is, obviously you're very smart. You've done this for a while. You're a CRO. You know what things to look at. What did it give you as a leader that you would not have had before if you didn't have AI?
I think what it would probably give me as far as this specific scenario is really just the ability to, like I said, understand and know at the location level. I wouldn't have had that previously without having to hire a person who literally that's what they did. Somebody, that's all they did, or me have to dedicate my time away from what I need to be doing as a leader and as a driver of the business. And so I think what it really gave me that I didn't have before was not having to have a sole body just to do that. And also have the time and efficiency gained from anyone, even if that was responsible for it, to do other things. Like, for example, instead of analyzing the data, how about let's action the data? So now I can put a resource against actioning it to actually drive better outcomes for our business and our customers than spending that time just aggregating and analyzing it and then sharing the insights. And I think that's super important, is what is the outcome that you can, and the time that you can spend driving outcomes versus in analysis.
Yeah, I think everyone, especially with people like yourself who are power users, like there's some people who use it all the time, but they use it very light. And there's other people who are like really deep dive into, which I consider you one of those people. It's just like you just dive in. And it's fun to hear your use cases and what you use it for. What do you think you're using AI for, whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever, that most people aren't, that you're getting a lot of good results out of?
Ooh, that's an interesting question that most people are not, because it's interesting. I think for me, maybe, and again, I don't see this a lot. I see a lot of people, to your point, use simple prompts for certain things. I honestly use it, and I'll give you an example. I use it for like my complete end-to-end go-to-market strategy. So let me kind of start. So first is I feed it the product description just from a website. So it knows exactly what product. So in this scenario, we have a OnePax software. OnePax is interesting because it's meant for teleradiologists. And so the thing that I've mentioned to you, and I'll give you, I think this will make sense in context. I said we're an urgent care company, so we're vertical SaaS and services. However, our teleradiology service, as well as our OnePack software, is vertical agnostic. It can be used for family practices, health systems, hospitals, and by the way, can also be done internationally. And there's not as different types of laws and things like that, regulatory landscape for that. What's interesting about that is we look at it and we say, okay, we have this business. Where should we go to market next? Is it a new vertical? Is it a new region or geo? Is it what should we do? So I feed it the product description, and then I go and ask it, what is my ideal customer profile? What are my buyer personas? What's my brand messaging around this product? What does my competition look like? What would my motion be? Is it partnerships? Is it outbound? Is it inbound? Is it community? What is it? The brand strategy. So I go through demand gen, sales process, everything, competitive analysis. And so I do all this because what it does is number one, it speeds up that time that it would take me to have all this information come together. Number one. Number two is it starts informing me of what it thinks where I should go, what I should do. Is it a vertical?
Right.
Because what's the TAM size of that vertical? Is it a
Right.
geo? Because it's actually, I can still go after the different vertical, same vertical that we're in, whatever, in a different geo. So it starts giving me all these insights. How would I position it? Is the positioning different by vertical, by region? Maybe it isn't. So ultimately, I think for me, that's one of my main use cases. And by the way, I still do it for the products that we have, because your go-to-market strategy has to evolve over time. New competitors, new entry, new buyers buy differently. And so it really keeps us up to date and ongoing and thinking about things all the time with our go-to-market strategy. So I'll say that may be one that I don't think is probably used as frequent, because it's more of an end-to-end workflow than it is just a specific prompt, specific use case.
There's a lot of times where I find the overall strategy, people get really simple with it, but there's others where, for example, with me in enablement, I have an entire competency modeling, everything. I can do the entire thing except for the humans actually taking the assessment, all with AI, the entire thing. And I
That's
showed
awesome.
it to the Utah chapter of Revenue Enablement Society. They're like, just blown away you could do this, because like I've done both what you're talking about, going go to market in my MBA with marketing. We had to do personas and ICP and all this stuff. It took us a good month with 5 people doing this for our project to get it understood. And even then, we're barely scratching the surface. And I'm like, I can do with ChatGPT in 2 hours while you did an entire month with 5 people. And then with the competency model, I've done that manually for years, and it's taken me tons of time to do that. So it's like, it's interesting when I think about it from the lens of an expertise, because if you're not an expert, you don't know how valuable the content is. But when you are, you understand how good it is, or not, because then you can start tweaking it to make sure it's where you need it to be, you know?
Yeah. No, and those are amazing. And this is what, for anyone listening, or this is why we do this, because there's so many powerful ways that you can leverage it to be impactful for you, your company, the team that you lead. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's shift gears a bit in our time we have left. Let's talk about what we're planning on doing here on the show with you and me.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Probably once a month, maybe twice a month. We'll see how it goes as far as schedule. But at least once a month, we're going to get together with Jonathan and I, and we're going to either bring someone on and have them bring up a problem, and we're going to see if we can solve it with AI, or we're going to take comments from you all in the audience and saying, hey, what problems are you having with the audience? And we'll just start picking apart and see if we can solve it. Let's see if we can come up with something. Anything you want to add to that? Tell me what you're thinking with this. Because when you told me about it, I'm like, this would be fun.
Yeah. No, I think it's great, because I think one of the challenges that we see a lot is people either just getting started and maybe not fully going through, like stopping because they don't know how to do something, or they have a problem that they're trying to solve and they don't know how to solve it. And so I think this is critical, because we'd love to get those problems and solve them for you, because it's probably something that you're struggling with and could impact. And also, by the way, it's probably going to test us too in some areas that we're gonna see how this goes. And
let's see how good we are or not, right?
Yeah, let's see how good we are or not. Yeah. But it'll be fun either way, and you'll get to see the thinking and the process. So I think I love this approach to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're going to start. We'll take either from my LinkedIn or your LinkedIn. We'll ask for comments and stuff, or questions, or that kind of stuff. So if you're not on LinkedIn, follow both of us. We'll start chiming in, and we want to hear, what problem are you dealing with, and how can we leverage AI, whether it's just basically ChatGPT or some other tool to fix it. But I'm really excited about it, because I've learned so much just from watching what other people do from an automation viewpoint, to just chatting or prompting, and just seeing what other people do is just fun, I think. So yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Same. Me too.
For you, just curious, because obviously you use Copilot as a Microsoft house. Any other tool besides ChatGPT, Claude, the basics? Like, which one you're nerding out on that no one talks about?
So one of the ones I'm really starting to dive into now is similar to Zapier if you use it, but it's called Make. It's just a little bit easier to use than Zapier, I think. And so I'm testing both, because you're right. I use Claude for certain things, Gemini for certain things, GPT, and then at work I have to use Copilot, because since we're a Microsoft shop. But I think there are a lot of these automation triggers and flows and things that I really am starting to dive into, because it'll help in a lot of different ways. Yeah, so that's the one I'll say that I'm starting to really dive into now.
Oh, I love it. We have an internal tool for the team called Momentum, which is more of an enterprise version of Make or Zapier. But
okay.
I was actually, before I was diving into Zapier, I didn't know about Make until literally 3 weeks ago. I'm like, ooh, I got to test it, because in my opinion, the automation part of what you can do with AI is like AI and steroids, which is AI crazy to me. You think about some of the possibilities you can do. I'm curious, what are you testing out automation wise with Make that you're just diving into? Tell me like one you're excited about.
Yeah. So I think the one that I'm diving into at the moment is when we get like inquiry. So interesting. So we're starting to put together, or we started with this company. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called RB2B. And basically what they do is they can de-anonymize people that come to your website. And so what that means is then I have an understanding of who you are, which then means I can automate that and I can personalize, do a personalized draft message back to you that's queued for a AE or a BDR or someone to then respond. What I'm not going to do is, and this I think is super important, and I think where some of this outreach personalization has went wrong is people just leave it on an autopilot and don't look at you get the hope. What is it? I hope your day is well. I hope you are well. Or some of these, hope you're good. Or someone, I'm a member of Pavilion Edge. Someone wrote me and thought that I worked at Pavilion. So you can see when the AI goes wrong. But what it's doing is it's queuing a draft for them to be able to look at, and before they hit send, go through. But this is saving such amount of time, because traditionally you would have to take that information, you'd create a lead or do a lead routing, then it would go to someone assigned, and they had to know that it was assigned to them, then they'd have to look it up and research, then they have to craft their own email. Now I can see as soon as they hit the website, I can draft it and put it all the way through to a draft status email response with maybe some information about what it is that they were looking at. That's just one way that I'm really doing now. That's, again, if I think about it now that I actually just said it out loud and went through, and there's so many people and processes and things that had to happen previously to make that happen. And this just automates the whole thing. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. You get to the point where I'm so in depth with AI now that when I explain to someone who's just starting with it, like some of what I consider basics, are like, what?
Right.
Blows their mind of all the things. You're like, we're not even scratching the surface. This is the basics. So it's just, I can't imagine where we're going to be in 6 months to a year. Just thinking about, I started the academy back in October, and I've already had to redo the courses 3 times because things keep changing. It's just move so fast. So here's my last question for you: speaking of which, let's change. What do you see coming down the pipe that you're excited about, and maybe things to be aware of as far as AI and GTM?
Yeah. So I think this whole notion of AI agents are going to be very interesting, and how they get developed and transpired. Because if you think about it today, what I just said about having to do with Make, I believe an AI agent's going to just know to do anyway. And so they're going to start building these automations or these flows, the generative part of it, et cetera. And so I'm really excited about that, because again, going back to time savings, think about the time savings that I'll get from having me or my team sit down and try to build out these workflows. Even though they're great with the tools, you still have to then sit around and do that. So I think that's going to be a critical next step, if you will, in what we're seeing today as for us who are super users, basic AI. But I think that's even well out beyond the novice or amateur at it. I also think we have to be careful at the same time with that, because there's a lot of things that I feel strongly that it's this kind of, and Elizabeth McCauley does a really good job of explaining her thought process around this, which I agree with, which it's more of AI in the loop than human in the loop. What that means is that the human should be driving everything that's happening and then augmenting it with AI in certain areas that make sense. And I think that's where it has to stay. I think it could become where there's elements of where AI is just driving. And I think that's the one thing we got to just keep cognizant of and make sure that we're using it responsibly and in the right way.
Yeah, it's funny. And so I started thinking about the same thing just recently about automations, because I just saw when Dylan, that AI came out about doing software programming and stuff with AI. And I was thinking, wait a second, what if you could do that with automations? Then you could just ask an AI to build you an automation to do this thing. It's crazy. Just think about some of these things.
Yep.
But with that power comes responsibility, good old Spider-Man.
That's right.
And I think that's where, I don't know if danger is the right word, but some of the concern or governance needs to happen. Because like with AI in general, not having governance over responses, someone who is not an expert in any area might get something and then run with it and then have major consequences as a result. So there has to be some way to govern the information or automations or whatever.
That's right. And I think it's on us, because if you think about, again, what's happened with what I call spam cannons, outreach and others who have done a phenomenal job of building a great tool that empowers people to reach people at scale, to personalize, et cetera. Unfortunately, nowadays they've been misused. So going to your point, comes great power, comes great responsibility. The same could hold true with AI agents or anything else. And that's where I think it's very important on the education side. The guardrail side of how to use it and how to use it effectively is super critical for us as really any leader, but go-to-market leaders as well.
Totally. So tell me, where can people find you besides LinkedIn? I'll have your link in the show notes, but where else can they find you?
Yeah, man. LinkedIn, I've got a AIpoweredGTM.com is my website. So you can see what I'm up to. I usually post my videos there. I have a YouTube channel, which will link out. But I think the other place other than LinkedIn that I'm really updating, and I'll post this once it comes out, is AIpoweredGTM.com.
Love it, man. Sweet. And in the future, looking forward to you getting up more content, because like I know as you as an ex-enablement professional, I want to see more AI enablement stuff from you, man, because you got good stuff.
You got it. Hey, listen, I use it as a role, a leadership coach. I use it for all those things for me right now. So I definitely can do some AI enablement stuff for you.
You should. I think it'd be awesome. But anyways, that's rad. Jonathan, I'm looking forward to more. Next time you and I meet, we'll get to take on our first many problems, which should be fun.
Yeah.
But I'm really grateful you're willing to do this crazy ride with me and see what happens this next year. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks for letting me be your co-pilot, man. I'm excited about it.
Heck yeah, dude. Thank you, man. We'll see you next month. We'll dive into one.
All right. Sounds good.
See you, man.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.